Hola Juan, ¿me escuchas?
Hola Sergio, sí,
¿Puedes hablar? Hola Juan, ¿listo? ¿Listo, listo? Sí, es por eso, fresco.
¿Había más luz ahorita? ¿La apagaron? No, por favor, más luz.
Recording in progress.
Buenos días a todas.
Good morning, everyone.
La alcaldía de Bogotá y el
The
Instituto
Mayor of
de
the
Artes y
Office of Bogota and IDE Artists welcome you to the second forum, International Forum, Breathe Art. The second edition of this international forum, Respira, Arte, has the main purpose to broaden the conversation between experts and the citizenship upon topics related as a sustainable network for the city of Bogota. Back in 2020, we discussed these challenges, and in 2021, we will assess the paths to solve these challenges: efficiency, conscious economy, citizen involvement, and public policies for art and sustainability as part of the topics that will be discussed during these forum 3 days. Our cultural equipment, we have the Center Cultural of Teatro Jorge Eliezer Gaitán with its multiple spaces, amongst which we have Gaitán's Loom, the Cinemateca Distrital, Bogotá Planetarium, the Theater Jorge Eliezer Gaitán as mentioned, and the free open Theater Media Torta and Teatro Ensueño, Parque Theater, mobile scenarios, Armando de la Torre, María Mercedes Carranza, Bogotá platform of the line Art, Science and Technology of IDE Artists. The parking lot, the Cinemateca Bogotá, Santa Fe Gallery, Casona de la Danza, and very soon, Theater San Jorge. We want to thank especially of our partners that have made this forum possible in virtual and presential ways. We are thanking the Canadian Embassy in Colombia, Albert, the University of Rosario, the Fondo Acción, Archiculture, WSB, Julius Bicycle, the Center for Sustainable Practice in Arts and Wine Arts, Theater Julio Mario Santo Domingo, Latin Latas, Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, the District Secretariat of Environment, the Cultural Secretariat, Recreation and Sports, the Mayor's Office in Bogota, and also Radio Nacional and Radionica, our allies that has made this possible. And to start with, we have Catalina Valencia. She is the director of the IDE Artists, the Arts Institute. She will be opening this official forum, second forum, Breathe Art. Catalina, welcome and good morning. Good morning, Jahaira. Very happy to be with you here in our second version of Respira Arte. And also, behind me, we have the plants, this ecosystem that we want to defend. And also, I believe that the message is that we are still on time. We are on time to take action, consistent, systematic actions to save the planet. Art has a lot of important roles to play. One of the main bets of this management is to bring Bogota to the green. Arts and cultures play an important role in this conversation, not only because this is the means, but the message and the messenger. In that area, for me, I'm proud to say that I'll be working towards sustainability of cultural scenarios, infrastructures, as part of this enjoyment of connections of arts with the citizenship of Bogota. I'm also very proud that We are pioneers in the artists in this very important conversation, not only at national level, but at Latin American level. Some days ago, I was sharing some reflections in one of the main newspapers of our country. There were some words that I tried to write from this reflection. Such an important one is just that currently we do need to think how to mitigate these impacts of the different economic, political, and social phenomena of global and national order hitting the main ecosystems. Our arts ecosystem has the possibility that through arts and the creation to invite citizenship. We have some questions coming up, and this is where we started to create this strategy, project, and program that we do hope that it could become a public policy that will transcend to other agendas, bringing this environment agenda, so we can see in artists, creators, and equipment a good opportunity to change. It is important to accelerate the public policies with rights focus, teaching focus, and all views setting a responsibility against all with the planet can be an important patrimony. It is important to go deeper in this cultural transformation, and it is important to defend cosmovisions, customs, traditions, and practices, productive practices, defending reciprocity and solidarity with the land. This would be a common denominator. On the other hand, we will establish some measures affecting the equilibrium between nature and need satisfaction. Lastly, to set some organizations dedicated to promote, affect, respect, and the wild fauna, flora protection. In a few words, it is important to question the traditional paradigm of the development of economic growth from a culture giving value to diversity with a harmonious contribution with the environment, taking what is needed from nature for this to go along. We're on time, and I insist upon this message. We cannot lose the opportunity to leave our children a place where it is possible to live upon. It will be a historic mistake that this bird that we can see through our windows will become an Instagram image. It will be a sad remembrance of the world that could be saved. In culture, we can have an incidence of these causes and consequences provoked by the climate change. We are not to give up on this. I will start with some of the progress that we've done since the first forum, Respira, Arte, in its 2020 version, the first promotion of conversation, let's say. It pushed us some very uncomfortable questions, and this is how we started to work on the topic from Inicia el Foro. This very uncomfortable question is, what is the impact to the environment with our operation? Are we doing something to change this reality? Are we thinking about the future, or only an enjoyment of arts? And this is very important reflection. And is that arts also are part of other agendas in conversations with social changes, cultural changes, and also with the environment changes. Recovery of the post-COVID citizenship. That was a very important bet that since 2020 we've managed in this administration. When we got to the artists, we have the question, we have to do some background changes, the transformation of the imaginaries that are there, that are really in depth, are encrusted in the culture. We have to think that this outcome of COVID will be green or not. We have to work upon that. Of course, we are trying to find other peers in the world working on the same subject, inspiring us to work and to learn. There is no other way to change deep changes if we do not talk to others and we learn from others, understanding what other people is doing or doing to advance upon what has been done, but also to build up what from what has been built. We dream then about an image, an inspiring image, and this is sustainable planet in the future. We dream about this planet that we have in Bogota. It is an equipment that since with children, since I was a child, I was visiting, and probably children in Bogota are also inspired in the future, or maybe the immediate future, so we can have a sustainable planetarium filled with plants. We can say that from there, we've started to implement efficiency, energetic efficiency, and we have started now. Now we go back to the importance of this network work for the whole area in Latin America. In that sense, we have searching to as guides in terms of art and sustainability, to be pioneers, to promote others to do the same. So other theaters in the city will start to talk with this reality, transforming their own equipment. And of course, to have this conversation at Latin American level, at worldwide level. For that, it's important to work on a network. We have project axles. The first one is energetic efficiency. It's been said that big changes are taking place with small steps, and we start with Bogota's equipment. We are transitioning between the energy. We are updating technologies with a minimum of consumption. We have been working in this thermic isolation. We are betting to use the rainwaters. The first change we've done and that we measure is the change of luminaries in a very important theater such as Jorge Eliezer Gaitan's theater, the free air theater, Media Torta, and the mobile scenario. We've tested there all these new paths. We realized that we can use these energetic visions before and now. We've realized that there is a reduction, the sixth part of consumption that these luminaries had. This is a good change. It might be small, but it's important. We renew the projection system of Planetarius Domo. Not only we have a projector that has been a work of 2 administrations trying it, we've managed that. Not only we've managed that as a bet of a city to have a new projector to generate a different connection with the stars, and of course, an immersive theater from which we can navigate, but also how is that we could reduce the energetic cost that this connection had with the stars. And a coherent sort of act, we could see that this new equipment that is going to be planetarium with the projector, with the KGB 34 AGB has a reduction in technological terms, and we've generated a good bet for energy efficiency. The second axle, conscious economies, is focused on value change. It has a circular economy based upon the arts, a stimulus on inversion. We would like to see that everything saved in economy and efficiency, energetic, we can reinvert that in creation. And I believe this is a very important bet, not only to generate a conscious economy, but to invite all artists and agents to be part of this structural change. This is a good point for City of Bogota as a movie platform in Latin America, but also as an international movie platform. The Technical Commission in Bogota generating just these
Recording in
la reducción
progress.
del gasto energético y de materiales, también gestionar el manejo de basuras y residuos dentro de los parques y reducir el consumo de plásticos, como ya lo dijimos, de un solo uso.
Reducing the plastic consumption. This is a huge notice for this 2021. Involving the citizenship, we wouldn't be able to generate consciousness and a comprehensive vision of this bed from the artists. And it is exactly a campaign to incentivize the use of a bicycle. We have to reduce the use of automobiles, inviting others to ride the same vehicle to reduce gases, gardens, community gardens. We have to promote projects when these arts creation and urban gardens generated in the city, and these publications, meetings. Just in this Bogota, we have the bicycle city. There is a very important connection between the Forum and Respira Arte. The bicycle city is one of the means that the city is using, and this is a huge transformation. We started last year the first Respira Arte Forum, allowing us to have this conversation between specialists, international panelists from the United Kingdom. We want to thank them, Julius Bicycle, because he's been a good peer or colleague in this path, and of course all allies, Culture 21, Broadway, Shock, Espectador, Canal Capital, Canal 13, all these people with a t-shirt on, because these media is important for these topics conversation with the citizenship. We have more than 2,000 productions, people educating the children, and education with children. They are voice and consciousness of what is going to be this planet like. They are insisting upon the need to be able to transform this from now. We were the hosts of Teatro Parque. We have a good alliance with the foundation in Boden. We started a market of sustainable products, promoting the birds, promoting children's environments with the exhibition of photos of birds. Our program is not only thinking about how to train children in the arts, but training as citizens. That is important to have this very important connection, and how the children are serving, and from the creation and recycling, creative recycling, they start having consciousness of this important bet for the present and for the future. And a very important component that will be unmanageable without, and with other conversations with the mayor's office, we've managed to have public policies incidents. This is a construction of a dialogue and working group with decision makers. Without this, if it is not left in a program or have incidents in public policies, this will be not helping other agencies and agendas of the city. We have created a bi-monthly table on public policies with decision makers. Definitely, this is a conversation that has to be enriched, that has to be generating very uncomfortable questions, including other practices, so we can understand and learn and to call to action. And this is important. Small and big cultural changes, actions, this will not be only left in crossover conversations. I want to thank, and to finish this presentation, the whole Arte's equipment and team, because they're pioneers, because they have asked these very uncomfortable questions, so we can decide on this bet. This is not easy, from cultural equipment to the Deputy Director of Mauricio of Artists, and all the equipment, the team of cultural equipment. Without them, we couldn't be able to do this as a possible compensation of a city. I want to thank the mayor's office, and lastly, I want to start with a message for artists, creators, citizens. Changes start with small actions, generating huge evolution. So you're invited so that each one of you will have a small practice reducing the fingertip that we're doing. These small actions will become multiple actions, generating huge solutions. Thank you.
Estamos en el segundo foro internacional Respira el Arte. Tenemos transmisión en directo a través de las cuentas de Facebook del Teatro Jorge Eliezer Gaitán, del Artes. Estamos también en la Media Torta, en el Teatro El Ensueño, en estas cuentas en español, y a través de YouTube estamos en inglés. A partir de este momento iniciamos la franja académica que irá hasta el viernes 1 de octubre con el eje Eficiencia Energética, bajo el cual diferentes expertos analizarán los temas
They
relacionados
will analyze our topics.
más importantes para generar cambios en el desde las artes. A continuación, Paris Dillon,
among relevant.
de Reino Unido, dará una charla magistral.
So we're going to hear from United Kingdom, the project that was born in 2020 and that is aiming to help the creators to work together, aiming to build a future for our main theater actors. We are hearing her from United Kingdom. She will be with us at 10 a.m. and she will be part of the second symposium brief year. This is an encounter that is wanting to have a dialogue between the expert and the citizens about sustainable scenarios, the challenges, and how can we use art and culture and environment in such a relevant scenario for society. At 10 a.m., Paul Dillon will be sharing with us sustainability. Please be mindful that he has been working with different organizations in the United Kingdom. He was also part of different theater companies and different experts in terms of sustainability in rural Apple. We're going to watch a movie that we have, a video from the second symposium brief the year, so we can keep understanding how can we reinforce the sustainability from the arts.
Estos videos son dos y duran como 15 minutos, más o menos el tiempo para que entre padre y ahí se nos vemos. Sí, sí, lo que pasa es que como ahí venía el secretario de Cultura, entonces vamos a completar ese tiempo con los contenidos que ya teníamos preparados. Y ya, cuando ya sea el tiempo, pues anunciamos aparte. 5 minutos aparte.
Pero nadie me dijo qué iba a pasar ahora. ¿Qué necesitas?
¿Dónde están los aliados? ¿Tú los vas a volver a nombrar?
Con el tiempo entenderás que es amor, puro amor.
Lo que estamos proponiendo es crear una red internacional de escenarios sustentables, es decir, que estemos conectados con la agenda global y las conversaciones coyunturales. Y un tema central es el medio ambiente.
Es un diálogo muy probable y muy necesario entre arte, cultura y medio ambiente y sostenibilidad. Necesitamos hacerlo a escala masiva.
Tenemos que saber que somos capaces y que la responsabilidad es nuestra. Nadie nos va a resolver el problema. Nadie. Los escenarios tienen que empezar a, lo que nos han dicho, regenerar, a reverdecer. Por otro lado, tenemos que ser más eficientes, mucho más eficientes en el uso de energía.
Totalmente re chévere, excelente, que empecemos a soñar de esa forma. Desde las artes, desde las instituciones, desde la ciudadanía, desde la comunidad, desde las diferentes expresiones. Es que es lo más necesario.
Y espacios como este, como el foro, se vuelven un espacio de reflexión constante y de diálogo que efectivamente, y si es un compromiso, vamos a hacer por lo menos uno al año. Efectivamente, como decía Francisco, pasar del sueño a la acción.
En el Planetario de Bogotá, desde hace 52 años, pues el proyector central era un proyector SAIS, un proyector óptico mecánico, que esencialmente nos permitía pues, proyectar el cielo nocturno. Pero era, digamos, un proyector que tenía esa limitación en cuanto a los contenidos. Nuestro sistema nuevo de proyección pues tiene dos proyectores, la Casa Christie, modelo Griffin muy nuevo, salió al mercado en diciembre pasado, y estos proyectores son de alta eficiencia en el consumo energético. ¿Por qué? Porque las fuentes de luz son luz láser, ¿cierto? Y esta luz láser entonces tiene mayor durabilidad como fuente, lo cual garantiza entonces que no vas a tener que estar cambiando bombillas todo el tiempo.
Bueno, la necesidad realmente de hacer una migración hacia tecnología LED es una necesidad, digamos, que
Hi, Patty, can you hear me?
con el medio ambiente.
Yes, I can.
Hi, Patty, how are you?
Really well, yourself? Mucho más baja.
We are great.
Y
We're here
sobre
at Salaga
todo
Plant, just
adelantar lo que
preparing
pues,
everything.
produce la tecnología actualmente en términos contemporáneos.
Can you tell me
Claro,
how do I change do my
una
slides?
luminaria LED frente a una luminaria
Sorry,
local
I think you can hear me.
es 20 veces
Okay.
menor. Hicimos
Can you hear me?
comparaciones con las halógenas, sus filtros, sus estes,
Yeah, I can hear you,
en
yes.
comparación a la luz.
Planning two things.
y están
First,
realmente
you
equiparadas.
should
No
choose your
podemos hablar
interpretation channel.
de
Please select
diferencias como
English.
había antes, es decir, los teatros no habían
Interpretation
esa eficiencia o esa potencia lumínica que se requería para sus espectáculos.
Eso quiere decir que pues, no solo vas a ver las estrellas, sino que puedes ir, visitar planetas.
And now just share your screen normally.
I share my screen and I do it from my computer, yeah?
Yes, sir, yeah.
No problem.
Pero además puedes poner contenidos inmersivos de otras áreas, no solo de astronomía. Entonces tendremos contenidos que tienen que ver con biología, con matemáticas, pero también se vuelve la posibilidad para la creación, para que los artistas trabajen en contenidos inmersivos que puedan ser puestos aquí en el domo.
Y por supuesto, esta nueva tecnología para nosotros nos brinda, digamos, una mayor calidad para nuestros espectáculos, sobre todo para los conciertos, que digamos que los conciertos son parte central de la programación del Gaitán y que hoy en día, pues, los artistas, los grandes...
Can you see my first slide?
Yes, sir, we
El
can.
arte puede también, de alguna manera,
Great, and you can just see the first slide, you can't see the other screen.
estos factores de
No, just
estamos
this one.
ligados a un asunto
That's
de
really good. Let me just check I
supervivencia
can change
del
it.
planeta y que puede sensibilizar de todas maneras
Change it
al
perfectly.
público a través, digamos, de estas propuestas como Respira el
Okay.
Arte, donde las personas que hicieron sus ponencias y lo que expresaron y lo que dijeron en su momento resaltaron.
Just remember, you
realmente
just stay there
nuestra
in the English channel the whole time.
de
You don't have to
pensar
change.
de manera seria
Right, I won't.
de la sustentabilidad, de la huella de carbono, del efecto invernadero, de todo lo que está sucediendo en el mundo y que realmente esto te tiene que expandir a la comunidad, a la ciudad, a las regiones, a Colombia misma. Hablamos del conflicto, hablamos de nuestra violencia, pero no hemos puesto el ojo, digamos, en esto que tan particular y necesario como es de alguna manera salvar al mundo a través de otras prácticas, buenas prácticas de vida que impliquen que nuestros futuros hijos, nietos tengan un mejor planeta.
Les vamos a presentar lo que hacemos en Recreamat. Somos un grupo de trabajo que hace talleres y experiencias desde la recolección de materiales no estructurados, en donde usamos cosas naturales,
al final, ahorita no
producciones de un solo uso dentro de esa gama de consumo humana que tenemos y de desperdicio. En estos talleres construimos muchas cosas lindas, potenciamos la creatividad, la fantasía y sobre todo trabajamos una conciencia ambiental y de sostenibilidad con los niños, los jóvenes y los adultos a los que dirigimos las experiencias. La forma en la que montamos nosotros estas experiencias van un poco en momentos en donde hacemos un encuentro con el cuerpo para conectarnos todos dentro de ese momento de creación o lo que va a suceder a partir de ahí. Es muy importante reconocer el espacio y observarlo, ver la cantidad de cosas que día a día nosotros no miramos y que en el momento del taller cobran un significado absoluto para la creación y la fantasía, ya sean los niños, en los jóvenes o en los adultos. Hay una cosa muy bonita que hacemos y es hablar de dónde vienen los objetos con los que estamos trabajando en cada taller. Lo que hemos visto es una propuesta de un taller del color, un taller de luz, un taller de tela o textil, un taller de materias naturales, de materias vegetales. Y siempre es muy bonito, al mirar todo eso que tenemos en escena, descubrir de dónde viene. Cada uno de estos objetos tiene una historia que contarnos. De dónde viene cada una de estas plantas con las que hoy pintamos, por ejemplo. El programa CREA pues es la plataforma y el puente que nos une porque tenemos empresas con las que podríamos hacer unos acuerdos para permitir que haya volúmenes de material y llevar a la comunidad todo ese trabajo y todo ese material desde las experiencias de Recreamat.
En la Universidad del Rosario nos tomamos el tema de la sostenibilidad muy en serio y con un alto sentido de compromiso. De hecho, la universidad está considerada como una de las universidades más sostenibles de América Latina según el Green Metric, que mide precisamente el compromiso medioambiental. En la Facultad de Creación no solamente formamos para tener un elevado compromiso sostenible medioambiental y social, sino que además aplicamos a través de acciones ese compromiso. En el programa de teatro musical, por ejemplo, la sostenibilidad social está a la orden del día y permea todos los trabajos de grado de estudiantes comprometidos con abordar, expresar, resolver problemáticas a las que está enfrentada nuestra juventud. En los programas en artes, arquitectura, diseño y creación, trabajamos directamente y a través de un convenio muy emocionante con Artesanías de Colombia, trabajando directamente con artesanas y artesanos de todo el país en el empleo de materiales naturales, en el reciclaje y en la reutilización de materiales que nos rodean, aplicándolo al desarrollo aplicado de productos, de objetos, de obras artísticas, artesanales y arquitectónicas. En arquitectura desarrollamos técnicas específicas para trabajar con materiales naturales como la tierra, la piedra, la madera. Reutilizamos edificaciones. Y les doy acá un dato bien interesante. Nosotros como universidad, como facultad, hemos optado no por construir edificios nuevos impactando la huella ambiental, sino por el contrario, en reciclar edificaciones existentes del centro de la ciudad, reutilizar edificaciones, que es el futuro de la arquitectura. Por otra parte, Todos nuestros estudiantes reciben, desde la primera semana en que entran a estudiar, un conocimiento profundo de esos materiales que son propios de nuestro país. Les enseñamos, junto con la Escuela de Artes y Oficios Santo Domingo, a trabajar la madera, la arcilla, las fibras vegetales. Todo esto con un propósito, y es que cuando más adelante trabajen aplicando desde la práctica el diseño, la arquitectura, las artes o las industrias creativas y culturales, prioricen trabajar con materias primas naturales. Nuestro compromiso entonces con el medio ambiente es muy grande, no solamente en la formación de nuestros estudiantes, sino también en las acciones que realizamos como facultad y como universidad.
En el Planetario de Bogotá, desde hace 52 años, pues el proyector central era un proyector SAIS, un proyector óptico mecánico, que esencialmente nos permitía pues, proyectar el cielo nocturno. Pero era, digamos, un proyector que tenía esa limitación en cuanto a los contenidos. Nuestro sistema nuevo de proyección pues, tiene dos proyectores de la casa Christie, modelo Griffin muy nuevo, salió al mercado en diciembre pasado, y estos proyectores son de alta eficiencia en el consumo energético. ¿Por qué? Porque las fuentes de luz son luz láser, ¿cierto? Y esta luz láser entonces tiene mayor durabilidad como fuente, lo cual garantiza entonces que no vas a tener que estar cambiando bombillas todo el tiempo.
Bueno, la necesidad realmente de hacer una migración hacia tecnología LED es una necesidad, digamos, para ser amigables con el medio ambiente, tener una economía de consumo mucho más baja y sobre todo adelantar lo que pues, produce la tecnología actualmente en términos contemporáneos. Claro, el consumo que tiene una luminaria LED frente a una luminaria halógena es 20 veces menor. Hicimos comparaciones con las halógenas, sus filtros, sus estes y en comparación a la luz que nos da la LED y están realmente equiparables. No podemos hablar de diferencias como la había antes, es decir, los teatros no habían adquirido luz LED porque no tenían, digamos, esa eficiencia o esa potencia lumínica que se requería para sus espectáculos.
Eso quiere decir que pues, no solo vas a ver las estrellas, sino que puedes ir, visitar planetas del sistema solar, puedes ver cúmulos de galaxias, puedes ir hasta la primera luz en la radiación cósmica de fondo, muy lejos. Pero además puedes poner contenidos inmersivos de otras áreas, no solo de astronomía. Entonces tendremos contenidos que tienen que ver con biología, con matemáticas, pero también se vuelve la posibilidad para la creación, para que los artistas trabajen en contenidos inmersivos que puedan ser puestos aquí en el domo.
Y por supuesto, esta nueva tecnología para nosotros nos brinda, digamos, una mayor calidad para nuestros espectáculos, sobre todo para los conciertos, que digamos que los conciertos son parte central de la programación del Gaitán y que hoy en día, pues, los artistas, los grandes artistas requieren. Cómo el arte puede también, de alguna manera, intervenir en estos factores que estamos ligados a un asunto de supervivencia en el planeta y que puede sensibilizar de todas maneras un público a través, digamos, de estas propuestas como Respira el Arte, donde las personas que hicieron sus ponencias y lo que expresaron y lo que dijeron en su momento resaltaron o abrieron la capacidad nuestra realmente de pensar de manera seria el factor de la sustentabilidad, de la huella de carbono, del efecto invernadero, de todo lo que está sucediendo en el mundo y que realmente esto te tiene que expandir a la comunidad, a la ciudad, a las regiones, a Colombia misma. hablamos del conflicto, hablamos de nuestra violencia, pero no hemos puesto el ojo, digamos, en esto que tan particular y necesario como es, de alguna manera, salvar al mundo a través de otras prácticas, buenas prácticas de vida que impliquen que nuestros futuros hijos, nietos tengan un mejor planeta.
Estamos en el segundo foro internacional Respira el Arte.
We are in the second forum, Breathe the Earth. We are broadcasting in Facebook in Arte's account, Jorge Eliezer Gaitán Theater, Media Torta, and Sueño Theater. This will be in Spanish, and through YouTube, we are broadcasting in English, so you won't miss any detail of this second forum. From now onwards, we will start our academic space that will run until the 1st of October with the energy efficiency axis, and different experts will be analyzing the experiences, the concepts that are more relevant to generate significant changes in the energy consumptions in the arts. So we're going to hear from Patty Dillon from the Theater Green Book. He will be sharing with us everything related to this project that was born in 2020 and that is aiming to help the creators to work together towards a sustainable future for the theater companies. Joining the main theater organization in the United Kingdom, he was able to gather different stakeholders, experts on sustainability in the Bureau to define a clear guideline and standards towards a zero footprint. Dylan is one of the main architects in the United Kingdom, responsible for the regeneration of the London Theatre along with many other projects. At the moment, he's the chairman of the Theatre Trust and the International Theatre Engineering and Architecture Conference. We want to give a warm welcome. He is joining us from the United Kingdom to this second term of Breathe the Earth.
Hello, and thank you. I hope you can all hear me. And thank you so much for inviting me to join this conference and to talk to you today. I still find it kind of amazing that I'm sitting here in London talking to people on the other side of the world. But I see that as a real sign of hope, because just as we face these challenges that can only be solved by talking and by working together, we've also invented the tools that will enable us to talk together about how we create solutions to those problems. I'm going to share my screen now to share some images with you as I talk. My name's Paddy Dillon. I'm a theatre architect. I'm not going to talk to you today about the climate emergency. I could talk about statistics of rainfall, or of the rising sea levels, or of fires, or of the numbers of people who are threatened by the climate change. But I know that all of you understand those statistics as well as I do. We all know the emergency we face. We all know the scale of the crisis we face. I want to talk about theatre. I'm not a theatre maker, I'm not a director or a writer, I'm not an actor, I'm a theatre architect, and theatre has been part of my life for 30 years. So have the other arts, writing and art and fine art and dance have all been part of my life for as long as I've been an adult. And
Recording in progress.
Or architects like me. Why? Because I chair an international theatre conference, one which talks to theatre makers all day, all over the world. I hope one day it will come to Bogota. And I wanted to hear what people within theatre were talking about. And everyone was talking about the climate emergency. Everyone was talking about sustainability. Everyone was asking the question, how do we change? How do we make theatre differently so that theatre is itself sustainable and theatre can be part
Recording stopped.
of our conversation about the planet? And I was bringing together directors and designers and others, and none of them knew the answer to that question. None of them knew what to do. Somebody said to me, it's as if we're all waiting for somebody to invent something and then we'll start to be sustainable. I said, we don't have time. And then COVID struck, and suddenly we had time. Now, COVID has been a tragedy for all of us. It's been a tragedy for the planet, for the millions who've died, for the families who suffered, for the cities, the communities, the economies which have been damaged by it. It's been a tragedy for the arts, but I really hope that somewhere in all of this there is a tiny silver lining. We've had time to stop and think about what we do, time to learn how to do it differently. So here in the UK, in the theatre community here, we used that time to start talking. We talked on Zoom. We were all locked in our houses and apartments. We'd never heard of Zoom a few months before, but suddenly we were all talking on Zoom about how we could tackle this challenge of making theatre in a sustainable way. And we divided up the task. We said there are 3 challenges here. We have, and they've turned into the 3 volumes of the Theatre Green Book. We said first, we have to make our productions in a sustainable way. The shows that people see on stage, the dance shows, the operas, the plays, all of that work on stage needs to be made in a sustainable way. And then we said we've got to tackle our theatre buildings as well. I don't know what the theatre buildings are like in Bogota or in the UK. Many of them are old. They haven't been well looked after. The roofs don't have insulation. The boilers are old. They use a lot of energy to run. They're not sustainable, and we have to change that if theatre is going to be part of the solution to the climate crisis. And thirdly, we said there are lots of other things theatre does as well. We have foyers, we have restaurants and bars, we have workshops where we make sets, we have offices where we manage our theatres. All of those operations need to be done sustainably as well. Is it going to be easy? No, of course not, because everything needs to change. But is it possible? Yes. We started with looking at theatre productions. Why do we do that? I think partly because that's what people see when they go to the theatre. That's what they remember afterwards. That's what they take away from them. That's the real impact that theatre makes on the world. It's in our plays, in our theatre shows, that we're able to talk about the climate emergency that we face, that we're able to talk about the challenges that we are encountering. And the other reason is that because of COVID, theatre makers were at home. The producers, the directors, the designers who were normally busy making productions were at home and they were able to talk. And so that's what we did. And we started to ask, why is it so hard to change? All of us know there's a climate emergency. All of us want to make work more sustainably. So why is it so hard? A friend said to me, look, I've been trying to make change for 20 years and I can't succeed. I can go into a show and say, I want to make this differently, but it never happens and I don't know why. And I want to talk about this now in a bit of detail, because by looking at theatre, by working with theatre people to understand how we could do what we do differently, we learned a lot about how to make change happen. We learn how hard it is to change things, but we also learned that it's possible, and we learned how to do it, and that's what I want to share. Theatre, like everything else, is about collaboration. It's about people working together in complicated ways, in special ways. It's like a chain. You have the producer who sets the budget for a show and who sets the show in motion. You have the director who is creating the show. You have the designer who is designing the set and the costumes, the production manager who is managing the whole process. You've got the set builder who is actually making the set, and the wardrobe department who are creating the costumes. You've got the stage manager managing the show on the night. They're all working together, but if any one of them wants to make change, if the producer, let's say, comes along and says, I want to make a production which is really sustainable, it's not going to happen if the designer doesn't know how to design sustainably. It's not going to happen if the director doesn't care. If the director says, well, I want a set which is a castle, and I want another set which is a palace, and I want another set which is the moon, then it's going to be very hard to make that show in a sustainable way. Or if the set builder says, I want to make the show sustainably, and I know how to do it. But even then, if the designer designs a show which can't be made sustainably, then there'll be no difference, and we'll make shows in the old way and nothing will have changed and the crisis will go on. It's like a chain. Everybody is tied to everybody else. Nobody can change unless everybody changes. So we learned then that you have to look at the system as a whole. You have to look at how people work together. And it's only by understanding that, by looking at all of those conversations, all of the 1,000 decisions that go into making a piece of theatre or that go into making any other piece of art, that you can create change for everybody. And that's the first thing we learned. You have to change the whole system. If I'm going to work differently, you have to work differently too, and we have to talk to each other about how that's going to happen. And then we can change everything. And the Theatre Green Book set out to provide clear guidance for everybody, whether you're a director or a designer or a writer, you know what you have to do differently, and we've come up with the guidance to help you to do that. That was the first thing we learned. And the second thing that we learned is this: the arts are as big as the world. You can have big shows like this. This is a show I went to in London last weekend, Anything Goes by Cole Porter. It's a massive show. It's got an ocean liner with 20 people dancing on it. It's a huge show, and that's theatre. But you can also go to theatre and one actor sitting on a chair surrounded by an audience, that's theatre too. The arts are as big as the world, and we need to have standards and guidance that are going to work for everybody. That was the second thing we learned. And so when we started making the Theatre Green Book, we started talking to artists of all kinds, artists working at small scale in communities, artists working in opera houses. They all had to be part of the conversation. And we came up with 3 steps. Baseline shows, the easiest to make, are shows that will involve people doing things differently. They need people to change, but they're not hard. They're not that different from what everybody does already. From there, if you can just start making shows in that way, then you can step to the next step, the intermediate show, which is asking a little bit more, asking that you change a little bit more. But once you've learned how to do that, then you can step to making advanced shows, and they're carbon neutral. They won't hurt the planet. So we've created a pathway a series of steps that anybody can start today, tomorrow. And by moving across those steps, you will end up making shows in a sustainable way. The third thing we learned in the whole of this process is that we needed to listen. If we'd come up with guidance that we'd written ourselves and simply given it to artists and said, this is what you have to do, here are the rules, we know that would never have worked, because first we had to understand what were the challenges facing those artists as they made their work. What were the conversations between the different craftsmen who make theatre? What are the decisions they face? What are the choices they encounter? We had to understand that, and we could only do that by listening to them. So we talked to everybody in the theatre in this country. We must have had 200-300 people coming on Zooms, joining groups, coming to workshops, having phone calls, so that we could really understand how we could work together and collaborate to come up with the guidance to make theatre more sustainable. We talked to directors, we talked to writers, we talked to actors, we talked to producers, we talked to funders, we talked to people in government, we talked to all the organisations, there they are on the screen, which together guide theatre, and collectively we came up with the guidance that would make theatre work differently, because there was no point in providing guidance unless people shared it and unless they believed in it. So what is it about making theatre more sustainably? What do you have to do to make theatre sustainable? What matters most? What is it that any of you who make performances should be concentrating on to make theatre in a sustainable way, a way that doesn't harm our planet? Well, scenery, of course. Think of the last time you went to the theatre and think of what was on stage. It all came from somewhere. The floor of the stage, the backdrop, a staircase going up to a balcony. It all comes from somewhere. And you can make it sustainably, or you can make it in a way that damages the planet. Props, all of those things that go on stage, the book that an actor is holding, the pipe he's smoking, whatever it might be, costumes, everything comes from somewhere. Everything leaves a footprint on the planet. And so we have to think of everything that goes on stage as part of the challenge of working sustainably. Yes, it will be different. Yes, we can't go on making shows in the way we used to, but if we think about it again, if we use our imagination, our creativity to work in different ways, then we can continue to make wonderful shows, but in ways that are appropriate to the crisis that we face now. Because the key to it is this: we can't go on taking materials from the earth and putting them on stages in London or New York or Taipei or Hong Kong or Bogota, putting them on stages, and then when the show is over and the audience is gone home, throwing them away afterwards. We know that's not sustainable. We know we can't go on doing that. What we have to do instead is to move to a circular economy for the arts. And that's what we need to do in everything, in all the ways that we live, the way we travel, the way we eat, the way we work. We have to move to that circular economy. We need to make theatre from materials that are reused or recycled. We need to look at our sets and instead of throwing them away, find other ways to use them again. We need to take costumes, modify them and use them for another show. And afterwards, instead of throwing them away, we need to think about how they might be used again. An old designer said to me that he remembered when he started out working as a stage designer, that often they would make several shows at a time. And once one show had finished, they would look at the staircase that was part of the set and say, okay, we can use that for the next show we're making. Or they would look at what they had in the store and say, yes, we can make a show out of that. I talked to Peter Brook's designer, who told me that when they went into a town to make a show, they didn't start with a lot of money. They didn't start with a big set. They looked around at what they had and they started saying, okay, how do we make theatre out of this? And that's the mentality that will enable us to make art in a way that's kind to the planet. And this isn't just about theatre. This is the economy of the future, built not on throwing away, but on valuing and on using things again. There are other standards we have to follow as well. We need to avoid harmful materials, materials that damage the planet we live on. We mustn't be using hardwoods that come from the rainforest. We mustn't be using PVC that we know damages the earth. There are alternatives and we need to find them and we need to use them. We need to reduce the energy we use in lighting or in sound systems. We need to reduce the journeys that bring audiences to our theatres, the flights from artists. All of those we can look at again and find ways to work more sustainably for the future. And to achieve that, we need to look at everything. We need to look at the whole chain. Theatre is a chain made of links, and we need to take each one and ask ourselves, how can we do this differently? How can we do it better? How can we change it so that we can feel confident and assured that the work we're making, the art we're making, is being made in a sustainable way? We need to work differently. We need to use each other's knowledge and expertise. We need to learn and share. Working sustainably is new. The whole planet needs how to learn, how to live differently, how to work differently, how to think differently, how to collaborate differently, and how to make art differently. And we can do that. And here's an example right here that we're learning to talk to each other in new and different ways, which a year ago would have seemed impossible and now seem quite normal. And the same applies to making our art. We can do it in different ways. It is possible. And we know that's true because already here in the UK, here's a list of just some of the theatres who are already making work through the Theatre Green Book. The National Theatre, our biggest theatre, has already made 4 or 5 shows successfully through the Theatre Green Book, and they know as they present them, and the audience knows as it comes to watch them, that these are shows that do not damage the planet. The National Theatre of Scotland, the National Theatre of Wales, all of their shows are being made now, today, to the standards of the Theatre Green Book. There is no reason to wait. We've been talking about the crisis for 30 years, and we have the tools already now. We have the knowledge, the expertise to make theatre in a different way. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. It's easy enough, once you understand the principles, to start working differently. I said that the Theatre Green Book has 3 volumes. Yes, we're going to change how we make productions, but we also need to fix our buildings too, because it's not only the work on stage that we need to change, we need to look at our buildings. We know that they leak energy through the windows, the roofs, the walls. We need to make them preserve that energy so it isn't wasted. We need to look at how we generate light and warmth, how we cool them down, and we need to do that without wasting energy. And you might say, this is very practical, this is very detailed, we want to be inspired, we want big words. And in return, I'd say to that, look, we've been talking about the climate crisis for 30 years and more, and we've got 8 years left in which to take action. So now isn't the time for talking, it's time for real and actual change, and it has to start straight away. We need to be talking about how we can use our buildings to generate energy from the sun and wind. We need to be looking at how we can use them to support biodiversity. And our book on sustainable buildings, our guidance for how to do that, our standards for how to achieve that, will be ready in a few weeks' time. You'll be able to download it from the internet. It costs nothing. Anybody can use it. We want everybody to share it, to feed back to us, to learn from it, to teach us what they have learned. And together, through conversations like this one, through the sort of expertise that you're developing in Bogota, that we're developing here in London, by sharing that, we can all move forwards together to make sure that our buildings work in far more sustainable ways. And of course, there are other ways, as I said before, in which theatre can harm the planet unless we're more careful. And that's where we know that, again, we will find solutions. We will find different ways of working. So we have to look at how we run our foyers, what happens in our restaurants, in our bars. We need to look at the workshops where we make costumes and sets and scenery and props, and look at how they work, how we treat waste, how we reduce the amount of material that we throw away, where the energy comes from to run them. We need to look at our offices and make sure that they're working in sustainable ways. With the 3 volumes of the Theatre Green Book, we want to show artists and theatre makers that there is a path towards sustainable working, that it is possible, and this is how you do it. The Theatre Green Book was written not by me, but by theatre people, artists, craftspeople, people who work on the stage every day. And we brought them together with sustainability experts so that they could learn from each other and together collaborate to come up with the guidance we need, the blueprint we need for real and meaningful change. Why does it matter? You could say, it's only a theatre show. Surely it's nothing compared to the aeroplane taking off from the airport on the other side of town. Surely it's nothing compared to the shops and the cinemas and the shopping malls. It matters because at this stage in the crisis, everything matters. You could say, well, Colombia is a small country. Surely it doesn't matter compared to the emissions of the United Kingdom. And we could say, surely the United Kingdom doesn't matter compared to the emissions of America or China. Until they change, why should we change? But we know that now everything needs to change. We need to look at everything again and find, through our creativity, through our wisdom, through our expertise and knowledge, through the conversations we can have together, new ways of doing things to make sure that we can continue to live and to make work on this planet. It matters because theatre matters. It matters because the arts matter above all, because the arts and the creativity that goes into them and the sharing that goes into them are the solution to this problem. And we know that if we can change the arts, then the arts can change the world. Thanks very much for listening. And I really hope we've got some time perhaps for a few questions now that I've finished talking.
A Paris Dillon desde el Reino Unido,
Thank you to Paris Dillon from the United Kingdom, talking about sustainability on all these subjects related to the care of the environment. From the art, we are thanking our guests for this magister.
Patty, thank you very much.
Patty, thank you.
Thanks very much indeed.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much for being with us.
En el Planetario de Bogotá, desde hace 52 años, pues el proyector central era un proyector SAIS, un proyector óptico mecánico, que esencialmente nos permitía pues, proyectar el cielo nocturno. Pero era, digamos, un proyector que tenía esa limitación en cuanto a los contenidos. Nuestro sistema nuevo de proyección pues tiene dos proyectores de la casa Christie, modelo Griffin muy nuevo, salió al mercado en diciembre pasado, y estos proyectores son de alta eficiencia en el consumo energético. ¿Por qué? Porque las fuentes de luz son luz láser, ¿cierto? Y esta luz láser entonces tiene mayor durabilidad como fuente, lo cual garantiza entonces que no vas a tener que estar cambiando bombillas todo el tiempo.
Bueno, la necesidad realmente de hacer una migración hacia tecnología LED es una necesidad, digamos, para ser amigables con el medio ambiente, tener una economía de consumo mucho más baja y, sobre todo, adelantar lo que pues, produce la tecnología actualmente en términos contemporáneos. Claro, el consumo que tiene una luminaria LED frente a una luminaria halógena es 20 veces menor. Hicimos comparaciones con las halógenas, sus filtros, sus y en comparación a la luz que nos da la LED, y están realmente equiparables. No podemos hablar de diferencias como la había antes, es decir, los teatros no habían adquirido luz LED porque no tenían, digamos, esa eficiencia o esa potencia lumínica que se requería para sus espectáculos.
Eso quiere decir que pues, no solo vas a ver las estrellas, sino que puedes ir, visitar planetas del sistema solar, puedes ver cúmulos de galaxias, puedes ir hasta la primera luz en la radiación cósmica de fondo, muy lejos. Pero además puedes poner contenidos inmersivos de otras áreas, no solo de astronomía. Entonces tendremos contenidos que tienen que ver con biología, con matemáticas, pero también se vuelve la posibilidad para la creación, para que los artistas trabajan en contenidos inmersivos que puedan ser puestos aquí en el domo.
Y por supuesto, esta nueva tecnología para nosotros nos brinda, digamos, una mayor calidad para nuestros espectáculos, sobre todo para los conciertos, que digamos que los conciertos son parte central de la programación del Gaitán y que hoy en día, pues, los artistas, los grandes artistas requieren. Cómo el arte puede también, de alguna manera, intervenir en estos factores que estamos ligados a un asunto de supervivencia en el planeta y que puede sensibilizar de todas maneras un público a través, digamos, de estas propuestas como Respira el Arte, donde las personas que hicieron sus ponencias y lo que expresaron y lo que dijeron en su momento resaltaron o abrieron la capacidad nuestra realmente de pensar de manera seria el factor de la sustentabilidad, de la huella de carbono, del efecto invernadero, de todo lo que está sucediendo en el mundo, y que realmente esto te tiene que expandir a la comunidad, a la ciudad, a las regiones, a Colombia misma. Hablamos del conflicto, hablamos de nuestra violencia, pero no hemos puesto el ojo, digamos, en esto que tan particular y necesario como es, de alguna manera, salvar al mundo a través de otras prácticas, buenas prácticas de vida que impliquen que nuestros futuros hijos, nietos tengan un mejor planeta.
Les vamos a presentar lo que hacemos en Recreamat. Somos un grupo de trabajo que hace talleres y experiencias desde la recolección de materiales no estructurados, en donde usamos cosas naturales, también utilizamos producciones de un solo uso dentro de esa gama de consumo humana que tenemos y de desperdicio. En estos talleres construimos muchas cosas lindas, potenciamos la creatividad, la fantasía y sobre todo trabajamos una conciencia ambiental y de sostenibilidad con los niños, los jóvenes y los adultos a los que dirigimos las experiencias. La forma en la que montamos nosotros estas experiencias van un poco en momentos en donde hacemos un encuentro con el cuerpo para conectarnos todos dentro de ese momento de creación o lo que va a suceder a partir de ahí. Es muy importante reconocer el espacio y observarlo, ver la cantidad de cosas que día a día nosotros no miramos y que en el momento del taller cobran un significado absoluto para la creación y la fantasía, ya sean los niños, en los jóvenes o en los adultos. Hay una cosa muy bonita que hacemos y es hablar de dónde vienen los objetos con los que estamos trabajando en cada taller. Lo que hemos visto es una propuesta de un taller del color, un taller de luz, un taller de tela o textil, un taller de materias naturales, de materias vegetales. Y siempre es muy bonito, al mirar todo eso que tenemos en escena, descubrir de dónde viene. Cada uno de estos objetos tiene una historia que contarnos. ¿De dónde viene cada una de estas plantas con las que hoy pintamos, por ejemplo? El programa CREA pues es la plataforma y el puente que nos une, porque tenemos empresas con las que podríamos hacer unos acuerdos para permitir que haya volúmenes de material y llevar a la comunidad todo ese trabajo y todo ese material desde las experiencias de Recreamat.
estamos proponiendo es crear una red internacional de escenarios sustentables, es decir, que estemos conectados con la agenda global y las conversaciones coyunturales. Y un tema central es el medio ambiente.
Es un diálogo muy probable y muy necesario entre arte, cultura y medio ambiente y sostenibilidad. Necesitamos hacerlo a escala masiva.
Tenemos que saber que somos capaces y que la responsabilidad es nuestra. Nadie nos va a resolver el problema. Nadie. Los escenarios tienen que empezar a, lo que nos han dicho, regenerar, a reverdecer. Por otro lado, tenemos que ser más eficientes, mucho más eficientes en el uso de energía.
Totalmente re chévere, excelente que empecemos a soñar de esta forma. Desde las artes, desde las instituciones, desde la ciudadanía, desde la comunidad, desde las diferentes expresiones. Es que es lo más necesario.
Y espacios como este, como el foro, se vuelven un espacio de reflexión constante y de diálogo que efectivamente, y si es un compromiso, vamos a hacer por lo menos uno al año. Efectivamente, como decía Francisco, pasar del sueño a la acción.
Con el tiempo entenderás que es amor, puro amor.
En la Universidad del Rosario nos tomamos el tema de la sostenibilidad muy en serio y con un alto sentido de compromiso. De hecho, la universidad está considerada como una de las universidades más sostenibles de América Latina, según el Green Metric, que mide precisamente el compromiso medioambiental. En la Facultad de Creación no solamente formamos para tener un elevado compromiso sostenible medioambiental y social, sino que además aplicamos a través de acciones ese compromiso. En el programa de teatro musical, por ejemplo, la sostenibilidad social está a la orden del día y permea todos los trabajos de grado de estudiantes comprometidos con abordar, expresar, resolver problemáticas a las que está enfrentada nuestra juventud. En los programas en artes, arquitectura, diseño y creación, trabajamos directamente y a través de un convenio muy emocionante con Artesanías de Colombia, trabajando directamente con artesanas y artesanos de todo el país, en el empleo de materiales naturales, en el reciclaje y en la reutilización de materiales que nos rodean, aplicándolo al desarrollo aplicado de productos, de objetos, de obras artísticas, artesanales y arquitectónicas. En arquitectura desarrollamos técnicas específicas para trabajar con materiales naturales como la tierra, la piedra, la madera. Reutilizamos edificaciones. Y les doy acá un dato bien interesante. Nosotros como universidad, como facultad, hemos optado no por construir edificios nuevos impactando la huella ambiental, sino por el contrario, en reciclar edificaciones existentes del centro de la ciudad, reutilizar edificaciones, que es el futuro de la arquitectura. Por otra parte, todos nuestros estudiantes reciben, desde la primera semana en que entran a estudiar, un conocimiento profundo de esos materiales que son propios de nuestro país. Les enseñamos, junto con la Escuela de Artes y Oficios Santo Domingo, a trabajar la madera, la arcilla, las fibras vegetales. Todo esto con un propósito, y es que cuando más adelante trabajen aplicando desde la práctica el diseño, la arquitectura, las artes o las industrias creativas y culturales, prioricen trabajar con materias primas naturales. Nuestro compromiso entonces con el medio ambiente es muy grande, no solamente en la formación de nuestros estudiantes, sino también en las acciones que realizamos como facultad y como universidad.
En el Planetario de Bogotá, desde hace 52 años, pues el proyector central era un proyector SAIS, un proyector óptico mecánico, que esencialmente nos permitía pues, proyectar el cielo nocturno. Pero era, digamos, un proyector que tenía esa limitación en cuanto a los contenidos. Nuestro sistema nuevo de proyección pues, tiene dos proyectores de la casa Christie, modelo Griffin muy nuevo, salió al mercado en diciembre pasado, y estos proyectores son de alta eficiencia en el consumo energético. ¿Por qué? Porque las fuentes de luz son luz láser, ¿cierto? Y esta luz láser entonces tiene mayor durabilidad como fuente, lo cual garantiza entonces que no vas a tener que estar cambiando bombillas todo el tiempo.
Bueno, la necesidad realmente de hacer una migración hacia tecnología LED es una necesidad, digamos, para ser amigables con el medio ambiente, tener una economía de consumo mucho más baja y, sobre todo, adelantar lo que pues, produce la tecnología actualmente en términos contemporáneos. Claro, el el consumo que tiene una luminaria LED frente a una luminaria halógena es 20 veces menor. Hicimos comparaciones con las halógenas, sus filtros, sus estes, y en comparación a la luz que nos da la LED, y están realmente equiparables. No podemos hablar de diferencias como la había antes, es decir, los teatros no habían adquirido luz LED porque no tenían, digamos, esa eficiencia o esa potencia lumínica que se requería para sus espectáculos.
Eso quiere decir que pues, no solo vas a ver las estrellas, sino que puedes ir, visitar planetas del sistema solar, puedes ver cúmulos de galaxias, puedes ir hasta la primera luz en la radiación cósmica de fondo, muy lejos. Pero además puedes poner contenidos inmersivos de otras áreas, no solo de astronomía. Entonces tendremos contenidos que tienen que ver con biología, con matemáticas, pero también se vuelve la posibilidad para la creación, para que los artistas trabajen en contenidos inmersivos que puedan ser puestos aquí en el domo.
Y por supuesto, esta nueva tecnología para nosotros nos brinda, digamos, una mayor calidad para nuestros espectáculos, sobre todo para los conciertos, que digamos que los conciertos son parte central de la programación del Gaitán y que hoy en día pues, los artistas, los grandes artistas requieren. Cómo el arte puede también, de alguna manera, intervenir en estos factores que estamos ligados a un asunto de supervivencia en el planeta y que puede sensibilizar de todas maneras un público a través, digamos, de estas propuestas como Respira el Arte, donde las personas que hicieron sus ponencias y lo que expresaron y lo que dijeron en su momento resaltaron o abrieron la capacidad nuestra realmente de pensar de manera seria el factor de la sustentabilidad, de la huella de carbono, del efecto invernadero, de todo lo que está sucediendo en el mundo y que realmente esto te tiene que expandir a la comunidad, a la ciudad, a las regiones, a Colombia misma. Hablamos del conflicto, hablamos de
Hi Dave, how are you?
pero no hemos puesto el ojo, digamos, en esto que tan particular y necesario como es de alguna manera salvar al mundo a través de otras prácticas, buenas prácticas de vida que impliquen que nuestros futuros hijos, nietos tengan un mejor planeta.
Les vamos a presentar lo que hacemos en Recreamar. Somos un grupo de trabajo que hace talleres y experiencias desde la recolección de materiales no estructurados, en donde usamos cosas naturales, también utilizamos producciones de un solo uso dentro de esa gama de consumo humana que tenemos y de desperdicio. En estos talleres construimos muchas cosas lindas, potenciamos la creatividad, la fantasía y sobre todo trabajamos una conciencia ambiental y de sostenibilidad con los niños, los jóvenes y los adultos a los que dirigimos las experiencias. La forma en la que montamos nosotros estas experiencias van un poco en momentos en donde hacemos un encuentro con el cuerpo para conectarnos todos dentro de ese momento de creación o lo que va a suceder a partir de ahí. Es muy importante reconocer el espacio y observarlo, ver la cantidad de cosas que día a día nosotros no miramos y que en el momento del taller cobran un significado absoluto para la creación y la fantasía, ya sean los niños, en los jóvenes o en los adultos. Hay una cosa muy bonita que hacemos y es hablar de dónde vienen los objetos con los que estamos trabajando en cada taller. Lo que hemos visto es una propuesta de un taller del color, un taller de luz, un taller de tela o textil, un taller de materias naturales, de materias vegetales. Y siempre es muy bonito, al mirar todo eso que tenemos en escena, descubrir de dónde viene. Cada uno de estos objetos tiene una historia que contarnos. De dónde viene cada una de estas plantas con las que hoy pintamos, por ejemplo. El programa CREA pues es la plataforma y el puente que nos une, porque tenemos empresas con las que podríamos hacer unos acuerdos para permitir que haya volúmenes de material y llevar a la comunidad todo ese trabajo y todo ese material desde las experiencias de Recreamate.
En el segundo foro internacional Respira el Arte. Iniciamos el primer panel de
second forum with the first panel of the forum supported by the Canadian Embassy in Colombia. But first of all, we want to introduce our guest. We will have David Nichols. He is the Vice Chairman of WSPIT from the United States. David Nichols has more than 31 years of experience in the fields of planning and activities connection related to the building and the service, commissioning and maintenance of structures, facilities and systems. He's based his system in assessment and analysis of mechanical, electrical systems and hydrosanitary setups through the acceptation and analysis of buildings and facilities. Currently is performing as Vice Chairman of WSPIT in the United States, a Canadian company providing services of management and consultancy for the natural environment and the built-up environment. Our second guest is Mark Rabin, CEO of Portable Electricity in Canada, and he is also the CEO of the company founded back in 2015, when he saw a good opportunity for markets and development of energy, renewable and portable energy systems, industrial systems for the application of traditionally fed markets through gas and diesel. Now, the company since then has grown up to a leader, innovator in portable energy and also manufacturing mobile energy as service providers with the silent energy free of gas emissions or WASTAC platform emissions. His first company is the precursor of the EPE. It was a company of energy solutions outside the worldwide network and development. We are talking about the company BE. One other of our guests is Alejandro Gomez Cubillos, an engineer, subdirector of eco-urbanism and entrepreneur management. He's a professional in environment management and sectoral management, projects, environmental assessment, and the application of known instruments. His recent experience is related to the green increment, circular economy, and the management of sustainable KPIs. Moderator of this meeting is Mauricio Galeano. He is Deputy Director of Arte's Equipment. And please be remembered that you're connected with us. We are now forecasting through Facebook in Spanish in the different scenarios such as Teatro Jorge Eliezer Gaitán Mediatorta y de Artes, Teatro El Ensueño in Spanish, and through YouTube of Artes we are forecasting in English. So please welcome to this first meeting of the second International Forum, Respira Arte, Breathing Art. Thank you, Jahaira, and good morning, our guests, Ingeniero Alejandro, with us in live. Mark and David, thank you very much for being here, and to all of you connecting with us. Perhaps you will go to these. Engineer, we know that people will connect and they see our broadcasting. This first discussion session, the panel will be talking about these topics linked to energy efficiency, to art, and with this initiative that we have had from the Institute related to sustainability. In one moment of our history, our scenarios will be able to produce energy provided without coming from external. We have to start dreaming. This first panel will take the energy sustainability, thinking about transformation energy, which is a challenge. As Patty was saying, many scenarios, not only in Latin America, but in the world, are scenarios that do have some years of being built. The one we are now, pretty one, for 85 years, challenges were different then. Now we have these transformation models. We have, or we want to talk about possible actions such as the technological updatings allowing to have a better energy efficiency, the setup of solar panels as an alternative, or maybe there are other possibilities, other energies, renewable or new energies, or alternative energies. Using green roofs, the rain, water, we want to highlight the importance of diagnosis of these infrastructures, implementation challenges bear by these technologies, taking into account these features of buildings that I said are some patrimony buildings with some challenges in Colombia and Latin America. We know that other countries such as Canada and United States, where our guests are coming from, they do take into consideration these buildings, these which are a patrimony, architectural patrimony. We want to thank again the Canadian Embassy for our panel today, and through which we managed to have David and Mark with us. Panel's methodology, we will have 5 minutes in which each one of our guests will introduce roughly what they believe is relevant to their presentation, these very important points in where they want to concentrate upon, where we have some questions that will allow us to guide the conversation towards these challenges. If you, from your homes, would like to write to us through the chat, we can have some questions, and at the end we will choose one of the questions through YouTube or Facebook, so we can just share them with our guests. We want to talk about, because conversations will allow us to approach these transformations, deep transformations and urgent transformations. Not today this any longer. We will start with David Nichols, Vice Chairman of W Speed. He's in the United States, and in these 5 minutes he will introduce his experience. David, thank you very much and welcome to this panel. We're listening.
Thank you. So today I wanted to talk to you briefly about the, understanding the sustainability goals and challenges, especially in cultural buildings, but really all buildings, but especially in cultural buildings. And my recent experience was in getting this the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., up and running. Right now, well, up until COVID, this is the second most visited museum in the world, and it had it's also open 364 days a year, COVID notwithstanding. And so in the design and construction and implementation of this project, there are a lot of features that I think talk directly to some of the challenges you're talking about, and that is water and energy. And then we have the sustainability goals, but how do they support the project themselves? And that is, we want to use less water, reduce mechanical and electrical loads, which really account for 1/3 of the energy consumed in the world in buildings. How to incorporate renewables into a project, either in a new building or in an existing building, and then how to reduce our impact for on stormwater systems, and how to reduce the impact of power changes, power issues, and reduce our reliance on the grid to run a cultural building. And then, of course, finally, was a key factor in this was how do we reduce maintenance activities, which is good for sustainability and for the operation of a cultural space, especially when they have, a lot of these are open 24/7, many days a year. There really isn't downtime for these types of buildings. And then some of the things that we did at this building was photovoltaics, the solar panels on the roof. There's also a green roof on this building. We do make use of a tremendous amount of reclaimed water and take less water from the potable source. Next key thing is verifying that the systems actually perform and deliver the energy and sustainability goals that your project had in mind from the beginning. Demonstrate the flexibility for operations that could change from day to day, week to week in a cultural facility. And then finally, that the key is to make sure that these systems are able to be operated and maintained away from where the public is enjoying your facility. And I look forward to discussing these with you. Thank you. Did I turn it off?
Good morning, we're listening.
Good morning. Sorry, you were on mute there. Hi.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Bueno.
Mark Rabin here, founder and CEO of Portable Electric, and thank you very much for having me on this panel. I look forward to getting into some deeper discussions with the panelists here. I don't have any slides. We've got thousands and thousands of images of our units in events and festivals and film and construction, but I'll maybe start a little bit with who I am and then kind of what we've done at Portable Electric and why I'm here. I actually started off as a geologist in the oil business, and that sort of started to get me thinking about energy and energy efficiency and how we use our natural resources, how our society uses energy. And that took me down a path that through oil, energy economics, business, and then I realized that to make real change happen, that we had to take real action today, because there's a lot of people that talk about making change, but change takes real action and community organization. So that's why I love what is happening here in Colombia with Irates and the work that you are doing. It's not easy work. Just to be clear here, I believe that if you keep pushing on this work, that you will actually be leaders globally in what you're doing. So I think congratulations on that. Portable Electric started when I realized that you could not rent an industrial grade renewable power system. So think about all the events, the festivals, film productions, job sites, backup power, events, all types that have power, that need electricity to run their event. Basically, that's run by a gas or diesel generator. So literally there is almost a gas or diesel generator on every street corner in every city in all over the world. And so we started off in events and festivals. So part of this really saw a product market fit to go into, whether it's a marathon, a running race, whether it's a pride event, whether it's you know, some other type of cultural events. Like we work with all the various groups around that are doing their events that require off-grid power. We also work within buildings. So for example, you do a fashion show within an old warehouse and you need power for everything from the hair, makeup, and curling irons to the lighting and sound. We bring in renewable energy systems that can also act as a buffer to the grid. So we've got equipment in 14 countries. Our main industry is entertainment in terms of the film industry. So we work with all the major motion picture industries, our studios, and basically that's been our driving force. However, we really started off in the events and festival space, and that's really where a lot of our passion is supporting the arts, supporting culture, and making sure that when you are facing your communities, that you're not, you know, that you aren't burning a bunch of gas and putting fumes and toxic emissions right into their faces. So that's a little bit about our business. Looking forward to having a discussion and telling you a little bit more about what we do, and looking forward to hopefully having some equipment in Colombia at some point to support your efforts.
And then we continue in our guidance room. We have Alejandro Gomez. He is an engineer. He is a subdirector of urbanism and environmental management of the Office of Environment. He is our natural partner. Alejandro, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your invitation. And I'm happy to have this participation in the forum. I want to tell you a bit of our own experience in the Office of Environment in energy sustainability topic. We understand this sustainability as a strategy promoting not only the energy efficiency, but also the inclusion of non-conventional energy sources inside organizations. And all of it is basically anchored in public policies, in climate actions, green growth, and we will have a lot of movement in the next months with these strategies. In this energy efficiency, we do have a very clear strategic lines to promote systems of energy and good operational practices, promoting the non-conventional sources of energy. Not only we have the solar energy, we might have oilic energy, biomass energy, small hydroelectric centrals. We have a lot of technology that we can use in the city. Innovation and conversion of technologies is important to keep this flow of knowledge, generation, transfer of these energies. In Bogota, many of these entities of the district do have some level of competence on these topics. That's why we are kind of configuring a sustainable network to consolidate these, to move these stakeholders. We have 6 consecutive nodes within the network in which we are seeking these governance systems, as well as to be able to move financial projects, to have clarity about these definitions, to materialize all of these intentions of sustainable energy in the city. Of course, we have public entities, private entities, the academia, other organizations that we are looking the same thing. Within our institutional offer, we've managed several things. Let me tell you, this year we have progressed. We have had a seminar on learning, doing sustainability of energy and accompaniment in the institute with some participant company. We are developing, we are launching next a project communication guide with some energy projects and some entrepreneur projects on the implementation right now. in this scenario, we have 17 working sessions, more than 48 written, and some participants that has allowed us to have 19 companies with energy features, such as the office with these type of processes, 5 projects with energy non-conventional sources, solar energy, 7 projects of technological conversion, and 3 good operational practices. We've managed the investment of some 20 billion pesos in projects of energy sustainability. We are saving 62 tons of CO2, the equivalent of some 350 megabytes. I believe that this is the center of our own activities in terms of energy efficiency. Of course, we are consolidating an institutional offer dedicated to all sustainability topics, circular economy, focus on processes, and surely we will have good opportunities to work together with the cultural sector. Okay, after this introduction, we will go to questions. Yes, if you believe, we can just answer these in the order we started. The first one, for example, questions will be for David to answer, Mark, and then Alejandro, and then we change this order for the following questions. So we'll be talking about this. The first question: we know that efficiency as a topic has really gained some importance in the last years and of all sectors. The culture is not the exception, and of course arts. The question, because of this decreasing of these cultural processes fingertip linked to these cultural artistic cultures through energy consumption, has permeated our organizations recently. To do some events, shows was not thought as energy consumption, so we could have a free air concert in the sector. So from there, and for you, what would be the main challenges for these organizations trying to implement energetic efficiency for these events or facilities? What would be these challenges, David?
So from a facilities standpoint, that in my experience, the biggest challenge is really how to not sacrifice the goal of the facility. And that's really my background is in facilities and buildings. But the how to be able to make these make these savings without sacrificing what the people expect when they come to one of these things. That they expect it to be in a building. They want to be cool or warm in the winter, and they expect the lights to be on. And how do we do that? How do we do that and meet the user's expectation while reducing our energy consumption and our impact, water on the environment as a whole. So the biggest challenge is doing this without it being visible to the end user.
That is very complex, David. In some spaces, such as very old constructions or buildings, there are a lot of equipment as part of the culture of the world. Museums, the Met, I don't know how many years this museum has been built. Our theater here, with lots of years. Patty Dillon says that in the United Kingdom, its theaters and its equipment are very old constructions, and that generates an additional challenge. When I'm building something new and I know that I will be hitting these from the view of others, I can do it from our own design. So this is a challenge which is quite complex, is it not? Mark, your experience on this is basically on elements, not only equipment and places, but events that also are moving, festival, parks, squares. And then we have another question in how to do this mobile. The way for us here is to set some plants, not only diesel plants, but they are hung from the electrical networks, let's say. So how to do it?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to echo one thing initially that David said is what he's actually bang on. It's if we do our job right, nobody notices. It's when you don't do the job right, everybody notices, right? So the second something is off, everybody, will blame everybody else for the being too hot, too cold. The electricity is out. People don't notice the power. Wherever we go, we take electricity for granted for the most part. It depends on where you are in the world, of course. But for the most part, at least here in North America and Europe, we take energy for granted. We turn on the lights. Same thing in our venues, in our spaces. What happens when there's no power? So those are the kind of questions that, how do you actually extend the walls of the venue, right? So now you've got cultural spaces that are in buildings, but a lot of times we see our public life and our event life and our cultural life, they're actually outside. They're actually in different spaces. They're actually around, and we want to create new experiences. And that's a big part of the cultural fabric of our society. So when we look at how do you extend the walls of your venue, it always comes down to needing some sort of electricity, either from a generator. And what we started to look at was, can we provide all the power that we need for an event without using a fossil fuel generator? And the answer was yes, of course, because we started to really pioneer that and understand what do people want to do. And so part of that initial move into this is really, you have to understand what you need, right? What do you want to power? How long do you want to do it for? What is your actual footprint? What's your power budget? These are kind of questions that, again, we take for granted when you have it in a facility. But when you start to look at how do you move your sound, lights, your stage, your vendors, everybody off site, you really have to get laser focused on understanding what is your actual footprint, what are your power needs, and then what are you trying to abate? So how many liters of fuel do you need to do this? So those are some of the early days of when we started to look at how do we bring energy efficiency to an otherwise completely unmeasured type of activity. So that's the first step. The other thing is there's a new movement afoot as well called sustainable production. So it crosses a variety of different disciplines in the arts and culture and production, where we really are putting this as a priority for our event, whether it's a net zero event or whether you've got your waste management really calculated, or you've got your water, you're reducing water bottles, and then electricity on the back end of this. We can do solar powered events fully off grid. And we can do 100,000 person street parties without a generator, right? But we do it with distributed generation and distributed energy throughout the event site. However, the biggest challenges are also human behavior and humans. And so, again, we can come up with the best technological solutions, but if we're not also educating people and understanding, and showing them the way of how it's done, then you're destined for failure as well. So those are some of the key points that have just sort of come up in this initial part of it. And I look forward to, again, continuing and maybe having a vibrant discussion around some of these points.
Human behavior is unpredictable. How would you see from your environment office? We know that you're going strongly in public buildings with a different function, but scenarios when we come to dance, to see theater, to enjoy, and our experts say we are not conscious of energy linked to this. As the spectators, at the end of the day, I want to hear the concert with high volume so we can feel it better. Now, after the pandemic, we'll manage this. And then the artist wants to see himself good. You don't see us, but Mark and David, but we have a group of artists with us live here. Artists are not conscious. They want to see themselves better. They want to have more lights. They like to bright, but we're not conscious of energy levels and what is the implication. So how are we going to do this? Okay, I believe that I will add, and I will bring these discussions within the global context in which we have a crisis, a climate crisis of resources consumption. We're exceeding the planet's capacity to generate resources that we need. And we have been taken to have the discussion within a global agenda, allowing us to have this development. Understanding a bit where we're going, what is the discussion's orientation, and of course, the efficiency of energy will take an important role in the development of the systems. In this forum, for example, we can see the cultural sector taking this challenge upon, and we start to visualize what are these conditions, and I believe that this is where we have the first challenges. Understanding the context, taking on board and taking action upon, to have action, to have the right decisions. I believe that is a second challenge, and is the how to achieve that, how to take it into a technical viability, how to generate financial sustainability for this type of energies. And then, of course, upon this, we have to just have the times in which we are now having these discussions, economic reactivation, which has been very difficult, this efficiency, needs in public expenditure, perhaps other needs are there, but we have to tackle all of these problems, global problems that should be added to. And perhaps a third challenge is its implementation, how to strengthen these facilities, to develop tools, analysis tools, allowing us to understand a bit this kind of featuring of the needs of energy, understanding this technological offer available so that we can use in our own scenarios, understanding that lighting, video, sound, all of these requirements can be taken from these technological offer, having clarity about this life cycle analysis of equipment. They are alive, they have a cycle, and in this area we can understand how to intervene with them in a right manner. Obviously, cultural service products that we consume, that we produce as well, and of course the challenge is based upon how these cannot be contradictory. We cannot act upon the deterioration of these artistics capacity and other cultural activities. We cannot decrease this kind of manifestations with quality and so on.
Okay, if you want to talk to one another, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions, maybe because somebody else commented and you have a direct conversation, feel free to do so. That's what it's about. So we have seen all the challenges, we have identified everything that we have. How can we do it in such a way that our audience at the end of the day won't feel any sort of difference? How can we do it in a sustainable way and that will be reliable, right? Because we should ensure it get short of energy in the middle of an event. That will be very complex. So in addition, we have everything that has to do with the technological development that is needed and all the alternatives that we have at the moment. So the next question that I have for you guys is, so we have a sort of map, and as Mark will be saying, we need to act. How can we do it? How can we make it into actions? How would it look in reality? How can we do so maybe the day after tomorrow or next year, in 2 years' time, we can see this implemented. So we can see a reduction in the carbon footprint and improving the technologies that we are using at the moment to generate energy. So what do we need to do? What will be the roadmap? The action plan? I'm asking this from the perspective on an artist that has this concern. And then the question is, how should I do it? You are the experts on this. So I just want to look pretty on the stage, but I want to shine on the spotlight, but I don't know how to do it. So let's start from all the other way around. Mark, how can we do it?
Oh, great. Well, first, it comes down to creating awareness. I mean, I think that's the first step, is awareness, is everybody wants to do good. Everybody wants to, especially artists. I mean, I actually push back a little bit on the comment. I think artists actually are very, very attuned and very, very aware of their environment and their surroundings and how people feel and how people react. So I think this is actually a really incredible opportunity for the arts and cultural sectors to take a leadership role in this space globally. I even know that the UN, I believe, has some directives around cultural energy efficiency with the UN SDG goals as well. So I actually believe that put this front and center in cultural industries and say that we're going to be the leader in the world. We're going to take a leadership role and we're going to get to, you know, whatever the metrics that we want to use are. But that to me is probably the single most important thing. If productions and artists and, you know, all the groups around it can't take this leadership role, then what does that say about other industries that are not as aware and tuned in to the earth, to the climate, to the cosmos, to whatever is going on around? So I would say that's the first step. The second one is we have to offer solutions. We can't just sit around and talk about solutions. We have to make it happen. We've got to offer solutions. What we've done with our small portable power systems that you can see around here is that we've actually created a positive feedback loop with our customers. At first, they said, oh, no, I can't replace my gas generator with a battery-powered system or a solar generator because it's not going to work. I use this generator. And we said, okay, try it. Let's see how it goes. Like, let's get you using it. And then the second that they realized that they could do everything that a gas or diesel generator does, made their production better. It augmented the experience. It allowed them to do something creatively that they couldn't do before. It was like a light bulb went off and they never go back. You never go backwards, right? So you have access. So that's where I sit in this discussion. It's really about doing, showing, offering solutions, and then taking a leadership role in this space. Because if the arts and cultural communities can't do this, I fear for the rest of the other industries that are not as progressive.
Cool, thank you. Dave, what do you think?
So I fully agree with Mark's assessment. In people, the key takeaway that I got from his talk there was that people never go backwards. We've educated people about what we want to do. We have a plan. And I think on top of that, then we demonstrate and kind of publicize the results that we're getting out of this effort. And so it's not just that your energy bill went down. It's that, hey, my energy bill went down and I saved 3 million water bottles from being used, or I diverted this much water from being taken from the potable supply and we used it. We were able to save this much water. And I think, you know, with my focus really on buildings and facilities and you know, some of in Bogota, your heritage and older buildings, what can you do? It's not build a new building. It's let's look at what we have. How do we optimize what we have? And that is, I mean, it's a huge impact. Every little step you take, you know, if it's just, you remember this as a child, your father saying, why are you leaving the lights on? It's really that kind of mentality. Everywhere we save energy, if you look at the overall consumption and from a sustainability standpoint, if 30% of the energy consumed in the world is in public buildings, every small piece that we save of that energy makes a huge impact. So the roadmap forward really is focusing on it, be able to educate people what we're gaining, and then prove that, yes, we gained this. Because that, as Mark said, that feedback, people don't want to go back then. If they go, well, my last project, we saved 30%. Next project, I want to save 40%. People never say, well, next time I want to do 15. They never want to go backwards. And so it's being able to implement things that make a real difference today. And then this ball keeps rolling and people get on board. And I think it just becomes the standard of the way we do things. And to Mark's point, that the arts and culture really kind of lead the way. And we see it in newer buildings. We see it in renovation of historic buildings. But when this particular sector is really in tune with that and more forward thinking than say maybe a government building or even some commercial interests. So I think the plan that it has to be do what you can do today, show the difference, and then educate people. And I think then it kind of becomes a rolling process. It just keeps building as we go.
It will be like a snowball effect.
Exactly.
So that discussion is quite important because from the government, we want to move closer towards these sort of technologies, that collective awareness that we need to have in terms of the sustainability in our environment, and also how the citizens and the users are quite important and how their demand would become a key factor to make the decisions, the right decisions, to walk towards the right direction and make the investments that will enable us to reduce our energy consumptions, the intensity of the use of materials that have severe impact maybe in the productions that we have. And that requires to have the involvement of everybody from science, technology, and innovation that we can develop from here and we take as ours. From companies that have been suppliers of different solutions that are very creative, and also with the research groups that we have at the universities, whom we have very big projects where we have been working together, or these different elements of circular economy, sustainability, efficiency, and of course, having in mind that everything needs to be focused of being sustainable from a financial point of view, so we can have everything together. Of course, there are different technological alternatives that we have on the market, and we need to start understanding the analysis that we do of each scenario, of each building, each theater, the planetarium, to see how can we use this and make them relevant, so we can go into greater detail and see how can we flip this around and show different solutions that would be feasible towards the needs that each building will have in terms of lighting, sound system, video. So how can we use the technologies that we have? So I think that this discussion is key. And bearing in mind, many of the buildings that we have that we use for cultural expressions, there are heritage buildings, and there is important to analyze together where is the capacity that these structures have, so we can change maybe the electric grids that are quite old, that they might need to have different devices so we can protect the different equipments. That is a significant investment. So we need to understand this lighting change coming from LED lighting, changing everything, right? So we need to analyze the quality, the color that we want to have, maybe the one that we're used to, but surely the LED, for example, would start having a sort of development as well that would start covering the demand that we have. So changing, moving for all the changes that the designers will ask for each environments where they have those cultural expressions, we need to start raise the awareness this in the energy efficiency culture and how they can add up to feasible alternatives to what we need and what the audience would like. Okay, so here you're saying you are moving us towards the next question that we have here. And you are making a sort of draft for us. So in line, Dave, have you started answering Aaron's question?
Oh, the last question of, how do you do this?
No, he was.
And how are you able to pay, to fund these things, right? Is that so I'm sorry.
Right, so the main concern here, or one of the challenges that we have, okay, we change our mindset, for example, we raise awareness, we start moving, but where the money will come from? That would be the next question, right? So from public scenarios that we have limited budget, but also private scenarios, thinking out loud, maybe this small agents that we have along the arts change, they want to get involved, but they say, well, how can I finance this? I have this independent theater for 200 people, or a small museum, or a small auditorium in a little town. How can I do this? How can I get financing for this? How can I start making all this modernization that at the beginning could be very expensive? Dave, sorry, I cut you. So please.
Oh, no, so there are a lot of different ways to do this and Mark probably is more familiar with this than I am, but there are companies and organizations, energy savings engineering companies. And so you literally fund a project, fund a new innovation through the savings you're going to see over the life, of this. So that's one way to do it. The other way, and you mentioned smaller facilities, maybe smaller concerns, smaller organizations. The key is that education piece that I think Mark talked about before. But and you mentioned that Sergio mentioned earlier that the LED lighting, for instance. So as LED lighting changes, you're spending a lot less on power for lighting. So you just have to make that commitment to reinvest that money that you have now back into more developments. And it's the same in energy, in your bigger facilities, big heritage buildings. Heritage buildings especially have a tremendous, in our experience, a tremendous opportunity for really big savings when we go in and we do simple things with what is there. And then you save that, you reinvest that then into new technologies and future projects. And again, it's that snowball effect, understanding that everybody can't say, we want an energy efficient planetarium, we're just going to tear everything out and replace it. That's just not realistic most of the time. So you have to take small bites at this apple until and reinvest that savings into future innovation.
You did something like that with the example that you showed with the Smithsonian Museum. That is a beautiful building.
Yeah, the museum, what we did was we looked at, because right down the street, there are several other Smithsonian museums, all open 364 days a year, same types of cultural exhibitions there. Museum is a museum, but pretty much. So what we did was looked at things we wanted to do in some of the older buildings, and then when we built and designed this building, we were going from scratch. So, for instance, water is a huge consideration in something that I don't think quite gets enough attention, because in most of the world, water is still relatively inexpensive. But we don't have all of, it's not an unlimited resource. And so in this case, we wanted to say the building across the street, approximately the same size, it's the American History Museum, and it uses this much water. This building, we're going to set our goal much lower. We have to consume much less water. And so what we did, and this is just an example, water that we would normally be pumping out because this building sits, the bottom of the building is below the water table, we're always pumping water out. We're collecting rainwater. We're collecting the water that we would normally have to treat and dispose of. We're heaping and we're reusing it at the facility. At African American History Museum, for cooling, the water is a huge demand for your cooling towers. We take the water that we're reclaiming every day and reuse that in the cooling tower. So we're not taking potable water to do that. That's a big savings. Irrigation, where you have, one, we want to limit irrigation, and two, if we are going to use irrigation, we're trying to use water we collected during the rainy season and then use it during the dry season to help the plants grow on the roof, on the grounds. And then the other thing that we don't think about that often is that this reclaimed water, then we have never used at that museum. It's been open 5 years this week. We have never used potable water for plumbing fixtures, for flushing toilets. The amount of water that is saved with water we already had and had to figure out what to do with by reusing that water was a huge difference. And then finally, energy savings for the HVAC systems. We spend a tremendous amount of energy heating and cooling buildings, and the ways to optimize that based on where the people are. So if everybody's on the first floor, and there's nobody on the fifth floor, I don't need to keep the fifth floor so cold. I can focus my energy where the people are. And that adaptability to move it to where the people are using systems that you already have are there. In that savings, where it's 20% of the building. If I move that down to where I need it to be, we save a tremendous amount that you could reinvest somewhere else.
Okay, Alejandro, how can we finance this? Well, I think that there are three key points here when financing a project like this. So first of all, we need to think about the structure of the project, the allies that we're going to have, and the frameworks that we have. So when planning this, it's key to understand that the process is not only about changing or replacing a device or a network or lightning or installing a solar panel, but it must have an add value associated. Where do we want to move towards? What is the problem that we're trying to solve within the premises? And that will give us a highlight of how can we find the technical and financial viability. So the example that he was sharing with us is beautiful. And also when you're designing from scratch, you can achieve a lot of goals in terms of efficiency. How are you going to use the resources? How you can reduce the impact that you have, and certify many things that go farther from very specific points like energy or the materials, but everything as a whole, like having this awareness, this environmental awareness, and being very conscious of how are you going to build. So that example is beautiful, but also we have many cases where the buildings that we have would impose us many challenges in terms of how can we do it. So having this add value when planning a project is key. Being able to understand where is this project going or moving forward, and for example, for public entities to understand what are the strategic lines that we want to have, the different goals, the different objectives that we have. So we will be able to find funding for this. It will be a robust funding and it will be easier. Then you need to select who is going to be your partner, your allies. So as I was telling you, having this network of energetic sustainability, that we are like working on the architecture of this network so we can foster this, and everybody that will be interested in this, whether it's private or public sector, the citizen, we can help this project that will help us to implement the non-conventional sources for energy and also to improve energy efficiency. How can we make it easier? How can we generate the products and the services in the cultural sector, spending or wasting less? So that is key. How can we move together within the city so we can maximize the impact that we will have in each one of the projects? And also is key to acknowledge the accompaniment of the secretary of these type of processes, having the different institutions that would be giving the support and providing the information to this network that we want to have and to understand if these projects are feasible or not within the governance framework. And finance, of course, would have different components. For example, when we talk about taxes, that could be quite appealing for the different companies when we are seeing a diminish of 25% in the rent, the deduction of the sales tax also is a driver for the people to see how can we achieve and have the complete picture. And also when talking about financing, we have on one hand, national banking, and we have Findeter or Bancoldex. These are institutions that have particular credit lines for these sort of products, green lines that are in line with traditional banking for managing these resources. So here we have very specific sources that would be willing to finance these, or maybe sponsors, many other institutions that actually could lead to different tenders actually that we have. Also, commercial banking have been developing different lines for sustainable projects with very interesting rates that could be quite attractive when we want to have fast financing, and it could cover different needs that we might have from the public or private sector. So this financing is very important, and it has to do a lot with having international cooperation as well, international sponsors. Those are key stakeholders in these processes. So at the end of the day, that is not an obstacle. We just need to understand what is the add value that we want to give with the projects, and we'll be able to justify that. It will be not that hard to find the funding. Great. Alejandro, I think that this is something very interesting. A lot of possibilities that we have for Colombia. Also, with all these small scenarios that you were mentioning before, sometimes you can get scared and you say, okay, I don't have the funds. Oh, no, that will be impossible. Actually, through the technical accompaniment that we have done with some institutions and with different buildings, we have found business models that are very appealing, and they have been very well received within the sectors. So having the PPA contracts. So these energy providers will be designing. So what is that? That's an agreement of energy that is on the long term. So this agreement, the provider will be designing, construct, install the system, and they will be operating the system during the length of the contract, and they will be charging a fee that is lower than the market rate. So the owner won't be doing all the investment. That's very good. So for public entities, you have some constraints in terms of budgets. So this represents something very interesting. So very good business model. And then we have the ESCO models. And this as well, they will be designing and operating and giving maintenance service to this, and they will be charging out of the energy savings that they will be giving for the organization. So these are different business models, quite interesting, that we could take into account. Mark, so I think that from your expertise in the enterprise, this is a question that everybody will ask you, that would like to know about your solutions. How can I finance this, right? So how can I see the return of this investment? How long would it take? How can I find someone that will help me to bring this technology? I guess this is one of the questions that you have always. So that's why you are the last one that will answer this. You are the supplier, for saying so. So what do you tell the customer when they would say, Mark, this is amazing, but I don't have the money for this?
Wow. Okay. First, thank you for that. I echo everything that everybody said there. So there's not a lot of that I can really add to that funding discussion, except for, before I jump into the answer to your question, I just want to say that I think a couple points there. New business models are critical. So I agree 100% with that. Partnerships. There's always some group that wants something and another group that needs something. And it's about really defending those partnerships. We've been acting in silos for way too long. And it's time to really find those collaborative partnerships. Quick note to what Dave said as well. For example, very quick low-hanging fruit. You change all of your theater lights to LED lights, all of a sudden you don't need to have your air conditioning on as high, because you're not heating up the entire stage, and then you start to reduce costs right away. So there are quick wins. People forget that energy efficiency alone, just as a first step, can reduce energy use by almost 50% across the board if you had to. So I think there's definitely quick wins there that I really agree with. One more quick point here. I'm just reading my notes. Really opportunities to create world-class showcase projects, right? Where they are used as case studies globally to show, what the work has been done, make small documentaries, really showcase on the before and after. So I think that's where, especially in cultural industries that can do high quality production and high quality documentation of this, I think those are opportunities. In terms of our technology, the VoltStack technology, we actually are an industrial sort of play here, where we work with equipment rental companies. So we know that, for example, a lot of productions, they don't own the equipment, right? So you'll have a production office, or you'll have a group, and you'll partner with another organization who will be doing all the operational stuff. But a lot of the times when you look at events, productions of all types, a lot of the equipment is rented, and it's rented from equipment rental companies that would focus on event rentals. Whether it's a wedding, for example, or whether it's a large street party, there's always someone at the end of the day who will own or hold all of the equipment, and then that equipment can be rented. So therein lies the challenge and the opportunity. Why couldn't all the Artes cultural organizations collaborate on a pool of equipment that they co-own, that they would then house with one of their equipment rental partners, and then they can have access to that? When the organization is not renting the equipment, it's able to be rented out to other organizations to generate revenues with that equipment. So there are different mechanisms, and I love that the idea of new business models around potentially cooperatively owning fleets of clean generators. That's a big step when we look at that, and then it can be branded. So you think about the surface of some of these equipment, you can put branding on there that speaks to your customer, your client. So if you have Artes, for example, on the side of this thing, and then there's a solar panel and there's a system and it's powering an event, there's a direct sort of, again, a little buzz there that says, oh, wow, okay, we're doing something right here, right? The organization cares, they're doing something right. Sometimes there's more value than just a monetary value, right? What is the value of marketing and branding? when you're looking at creating a new opportunity and new experience. The other thing is that you can also have this equipment partner with, let's just say, I'm just going to say, you know, BMW is doing a car launch, and all of a sudden you've got this equipment that's powering all the activations, and then BMW is rolling out. So again, I look for partnerships, opportunities on that front, cooperatively funding things that can be used by all the arts organizations, right, at a discount, and then you can rent it out at a full price to other organizations. Well, lastly, one point that I do have as well is, as the grid continues to be unstable in certain key areas, and again, I'm not familiar with the grid stability in Bogota and in Colombia, but I'm assuming it's probably as unstable as anywhere in some of those economies, where you might want to actually house a large battery system in your facility that is essentially storing energy from the grid. And if the grid power goes out, you still retain power for your facility. However, you also have the opportunity to start to sell electricity back if there's no one in the facility and you've got stored energy. So you can almost be a distributed virtual power plant. So you're able to take energy in and then potentially sell energy back to the grid. And imagine if every one of the Idarte's cultural buildings had their own large energy storage system that could then engage in this PPA. I heard that say power purchase agreement, a long-term agreement with the utility. Again, coming up with really innovative business models that are working in conjunction with the utility. Those are wins. Those are opportunities for these buildings to generate revenue as well at peak times, depending on how the grid is oriented. So yeah, a lot of opportunities again here, and it's just about what are those first steps? What are those first steps that people are going to take to make a difference?
Okay, we're about to finish, but there is a question that is made through the different channels that we're broadcasting. And to me, I believe it's important to just draw the path. In 20 years, what is your dream? Utopia. I think it's important for public policies with no hope. I don't do public policies. Without it, I cannot progress because I don't have an objective. But in 20 years, Mark, what's your dream about events around the world? David, what is your dream in 20 years of museums, theaters worldwide? Same question for Alexandro. 20 years. It is a distance that we can have an incidence upon. In 20 years, hopefully we will be here in this sort of area having an incidence, but perhaps we can just say that in 20 years, I see it like now I have to start working now. I'm not talking about 50 or 100, but what is your dream in 20 years, Mark, on that?
Well, first, if we're still having these similar discussions in 20 years, then we failed. So I just want to be, so the dream is that we actually are no longer having these types of discussions, but the idea of efficient use of our natural resources, efficient use of energy, efficient use of our materials, it becomes so common that it's not even questioned anymore. It's actually designed into every aspect of our daily lives. Again, I think the cultural industries have a real opportunity to look back in 20 years and say, we did it. We were the first, we were the leaders in this space, and we showed everybody how it's done. And that is probably more than anything is my view out to 20 years. We need to take the steps now and then take a leadership role so that when the history books look back at global artists and cultural industries, that we work together to create change that the world needs today.
And I agree 100% with what Mark said. The biggest challenge, and I think our biggest opportunity right now in too many places, in too many instances, it is optional whether you pursue sustainable and energy deficient or energy efficient practices in design and operation of everything, not just big facilities, but even small facilities, your home, but that we are right now at the point and have the opportunity to influence the going forward. It's not optional. This is the standard, and there are incentives and benefits from improving on that standard. A great example of this is when we do lighting analysis today, we're comparing it to a baseline that was, even 15 years ago when all the lights were incandescent. So when we put in LED lights, oh my goodness, we saved 85%. But now LED is the standard, and that baseline has to be maintained. That's where the baseline should be. And then your incentives come from improvement even off of that. And I think it's that continual growth, that continual progression. And it is honestly, we're seeing some momentum here, but my dream is that it's not optional. Your design of a building, operation of a facility, it's not up. You can't say, well, this is the way we always did it. That's what we're going to do. You just can't do it. You just can't do it. And I think in 20 years, these loopholes better be closed. And that's my biggest thing, is that we move forward and this becomes the standard and not the exception. It's not a showcase. This is what we always do. So that's really what my dream is going forward.
Thank you. What we see in 20 years, I believe that the whole dynamic of technology development, all this progress, even if we see it backwards, 20 years ago, what we had compared to what we have managed today, well, these are impressive gaps. 20 years from now, what we'll have is sort of standards on how to generate energy, how are doing it in an efficient way. This is the challenge and the vision that we should have as a city. Mark was saying it right now, and it's applicable to public policies. When we do things well, nobody will realize that, but when we do it bad, this is a chaos. And then we have huge challenges. And if we do not start facing these needs of energy sustainability, climate change as a topic, regeneration of materials needed to develop these scenarios, facilities, perhaps we will have big problems on how to sustain these societies and needs that we have now. And of course, cultural needs which are inherent to what we are living as people and as a society. Surely we will have to focus on this sort of vision of a sustainable city, a city that will couple well with this technology and knowledge generation, but some other citizens that will start to request and to have this consciousness on how these products and services that we consume should be guaranteed in sort of energy sustainability and materials and like social entities. And to close, one question that I have for Mark and Dave specifically, how certain countries or organizations such as Colombia, Latin America, Africa, developing countries could contact organizations such as yours just to have a network to potentialize this knowledge and interchange of technologies.
Go ahead, Mark.
Mark.
Hi. So, I mean, I think first, we are located in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So that's first step where we are. We're Canadian, but we're very open to working with all countries and around the world, especially down in Latin America. But also, there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships and for, just engaging in meaningful discussion with our group. We're very open to all types of different, again, whether it's strategic partnerships or other types of partnerships where we work. I mean, we work with, for example, all the major film studios, right? And I'm sure that there's a vibrant film production industry in Colombia. So this is these are some of the high level ones. Otherwise, I can be reached. Our website is www.portable-electric.com, and you can reach our info line there, and we can put you in the right contact with our sales team or our partnerships team. I can be reached on LinkedIn as well, Mark Rabin, R-A-B-I-N. You'll find me there. So always keen to engage and look at how we can work with organizations to advance their mission and their sustainable goals.
Yeah, and I think ours is the same. I'm part of WSP USA Buildings. But WSP, if you just go to WSP.com, you'll see that we're a global engineering firm, and really one of our main focuses, one of our corporate tenets is future ready. And so we have groups that if you go there, always feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dave Nichols. But if you just look there, there's almost nothing that that WSP can't help you with. I mean, transportation, energy, sustainability, buildings, of course. That there's just tremendous opportunities for you, and we have so many resources available to discuss these things. We don't necessarily we want to share what we know to help everybody be ready for the future that is, it's today. So I think, certainly if you start at that WSP.com, you will find us and certainly reach out to me, and I can point you in the right directions towards the people that could help you best. But we're always available, and really this is what drives us, is what problems, this is why we're engineers. What problem can we solve? And this is a big one that everybody has to have a part in fixing.
Right, thank you very much, Alejandro, Mark, and Dave. Truly, it is important for us that not only we believe that it's important to have this dialogue, not only to talk, but to call for action. Some ideas in my head is the call that you're doing, so that the sector, arts sector, culture, leading the path, leading the process of change. Why? Because we can. Because we know that we are generators of changes in the ways to think and to act upon in the world. And this call, we pick it from here, and we will be multipliers of that, so we can lead the change. We were talking with Alejandro briefly. We are ready to just to quote, to be used as potentializers of the message. We potentialize messages, but we are responsible of that and of the needed changes. One other idea left there is that we need to mobilize the cultural change in all places in which we have influence upon artists, public, and also industries. Generators of energy, creators of contents, technology creators, we have to mobilize the whole groups. And the third one is that we have options, we have business opportunities. It's not impossible, it can be done. And I believe that not only close it, but we have the power to do it, but it should be done. This is not an option. We have to do things and handle your office of environment. We have to do things to generate policies needed for this to be done. This is not an option. Yes, the decree for plastics of one use, Mark and Dave, we start launch a decree, mandatory decree for using plastic once in public entities. This is not an option. That has to be done, and this is what we do. So, with these good ideas, I'm thanking you. If you wanted to say goodbye or something, that would be cool. If not, good. Thank you, Mauricio, for your invitation. Respira el Arte, Breathe the Air would be this platform to take the message of sustainability. Thank you very much. We are taking this commitment as an environment office to support everything we can for these projects generation for this energy, sustainable energy change. Dave, would you like to say something to add?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to talk this over with you, and we look forward to seeing how all of these ideas really come to fruition in reality.
Mark?
Yeah, thank you everybody for having me, and I always love these conversations, and I really hope, we can't see the audience or who's there, but if you're in the audience listening, please take action and force and push people to take those actions, even if it's small. Every small action adds up, and then you start to change and nudge social and sustainable behaviors around how humans do things. And we are our own limiting force. And we're the solution, our own mindset and our own will to make change happen. And so that's kind of where I look at things. The other thing is look, we'd love to get volt stack power equipment in Colombia. So maybe we can partner with some groups down there to bring it. So I look forward to hearing from some of you on how we can bring this equipment down, and we've got lots of ideas. Thank you again.
Thank you, all people connected through the different channels, to the Embassy of Canada, because of their support for today's panel. Thank you, all of you, our guests with us from the United States, from the United Kingdom, and from Colombia, in this first panel of the second International Forum, Respira el Arte. We want to thank you connected with us through the social networks, Facebook and YouTube, with this broadcasting in Spanish and English. We want to invite you to do tomorrow, Thursday the 30th of September, at 9 o'clock morning time, for this very important talk and panel of conscious economies. We have April Sarwick, Andrea De Francisco from Latin Letters, Ivan Serrano from Why Not, Andrea Diaz from the University of Rosario, and Henry Burain from the Office of Culture, Recreation and Sport. I want to invite you to take part in these labs, workshops, and theater celebrated around the city. I will mention 3 of them for you to take note and also to take part on. We have the Design and Mobility Development Lab in Jorge Eliezer Gaitán Theater, Design and Prototype Lab in the Planetarium of Bogota, and the lab Reuse Your Talent in El Sueño Teatro and the Low Cost in Jorge Eliezer Gaitán Theater. All this programming can be consulted in the forum Respira el Arte, sorry, and in www.idartes.gov.co. We don't want to leave before saying that our partners has been able to function, and it's a possibility. The Canadian Embassy, University of Rosario, Fondo Acción, Clear Green Book, Car Culture, WSP, Julie's Bicycle, the Center for Sustainable Practices in Arts. Why not? Teatro Julio Mario Santo Domingo, Latin and LATA, the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, the Office of Environment, the Office of Culture, Recreation and Sport, the Mayor's Office, Radio Nacional de Colombia. To all of you, thank you for being with us in this first day of the International Forum Respira el Arte, Breathe the Art. So we'll see you tomorrow with more talks and more panels. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lo que estamos proponiendo es crear una red internacional de escenarios sustentables, es decir, que estemos conectados con la agenda global y las conversaciones coyunturales. Y un tema central es el medio ambiente.
Es un diálogo muy probable y muy necesario entre arte, cultura y medio ambiente y sostenibilidad. Necesitamos hacerlo a escala masiva.
Tenemos que saber que somos capaces y que la responsabilidad es nuestra. Nadie nos va a resolver el problema. Nadie. Los escenarios tienen que empezar a, lo que nos han dicho, regenerar, a reverdecer. Por otro lado, tenemos que ser más eficientes, mucho más eficientes en el uso de energía.
Totalmente re chévere, excelente que empecemos a soñar de esa forma. Desde las artes, desde las instituciones, desde la ciudadanía, desde la comunidad, desde las diferentes expresiones. Es que es lo más necesario.
Y espacios como este, como el foro, se vuelven un espacio de reflexión constante y de diálogo que efectivamente, y si es un compromiso, vamos a hacer por lo menos uno al año. Efectivamente, como decía Francisco, pasar del sueño a la acción.